Shaunaka, seeing the glaring Brahmastra proceeding towards them, the Pandavas took up. The Brahmastras are finer than the nuclear weapons. Ashwatthama discharged the Brahmastra simply to kill the Pandavas, namely the 5 brothers headed by Maharaja Yudhishthira and their only grandson, who was lying within the womb of Uttara. Therefore, the Brahmastra, more effective and finer than the atomic weapon, was not as blind as the atomic bombs. When the atomic bombs are discharged, they do not discriminate. Mainly, the atomic bombs do harm to the innocent because there is no control. The Brahmastra is not like that. It marks out the target and proceeds accordingly without harming the innocent. Text 13. Vyasanam Viksha Tat Tesham Vyasanam Viksha Tattesham Ananya Vikshaya Atmanam Ananya Vikshaya Atmanam Sudarshanena Astrena Sudarshanena Swastrena Swanam Raksham Vyadhat Vibhu Swanam Raksham Vyadhat Vibhu Vyasanam Viksha Tattesham Ananya Vishayatmanam Sudarshanena Swastrena Swanam Raksham Vyadhat Vibhu Vyasanam Viksha Tattesham Swanam Raksham Vyadhat Vibhu Vyasanam Viksha Tattesham Anya Vishayatmana Sudarshanena Swastrena Saksham Vyadhat Vibhu Viksha Synonyms: Vyasanam, great danger. Viksha, having observed. Tat, that. Tesham, there. Ananya, no other. Vishaya, means. Atmanam, thus inclined. Sudarshanena, by the wheel of Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Astrena, by the weapon. Swanam, of his own devotees. Raksham, protection. Vedhat, did it. Vibhu, the Almighty. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swamy Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, having observed that a great danger was befalling His unalloyed devotees, who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up His Sudarshana disc to protect them. Please repeat. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees, who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up his Sudarśana. The was something similar to the nuclear weapon, but with more radiation and heat. The Brahmastra is the product of a more subtle science, being the product of nothing else. Ashwatthama released the weapon just to finish his family. Therefore, in one sense, it was more dangerous than the atomic bomb because it could penetrate even the most protected place and would never miss the target. Knowing all this, Lord Sri Krishna at once took up his personal weapon to protect his devotees, who did not know anyone other than Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has clearly promised that his devotees are never to be vanquished, and he behaves according to the quality or degree of the devotional service rendered by the devotees. Here the word Ananya Vishayatmanam is significant. The Pandavas were 100% dependent on the protection of the Lord, although they were all great warriors themselves. But the Lord neglects even the great warriors and also vanquishes them in no time. When the Lord saw that there was no time for the Pandavas to counteract the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama, he took up his weapon even at the risk of breaking his own vow. Although the battle of Kurukshetra was almost finished, still according to his vow, he should not have taken up his own weapon. But the emergency was more important than the vow. He is better known as the Bhaktavatsala, or the lover of his devotee, and thus he prepared to continue as Bhaktavatsala than to be a worldly moralist who breaks his solemn vow. Presents the Bhaktivedanta purport. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are reading the chapter named Prayers by Queen Kunti. This is the situation explained in the context of post-war of Kurukshetra. The war is almost over. Pandavas were victorious by the mercy of Krishna. And the situation is that Krishna was heading towards Dwarka after finishing the business of enthroning Yudhishthira. So this was the time where Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, he tried his last means of disrupting the whole situation again. He had released a Brahmastra to finish off all the 5 Pandavas and the only descendant who was in the womb of Uttara. He was Parikshit Maharaj. So we saw in the previous verses how Uttara comes running for help, asking Krishna. We saw Pahi Pahi Mahayogin. That's how she addresses Krishna to protect her womb, who was the only descendant. So, seeing this situation in the today's verse of 12th and 13th, so Sutta Goswami is explaining to Shaunaka as seeing the glaring Brahmastra proceeding towards them, the Pandavas took up their 5 respective weapons. So, seeing that Ashwatthama had released a Brahmastra, Pandavas were quick enough to start counteracting, but they were not sure how quick was Brahmastra. So in the next verse we see Krishna, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up his Sudarshana disc to protect them. So Krishna could understand that Pandava's retaliation wasn't quick enough, and so he himself took up his own weapon, the famous Sudarshana, to counteract the the Brahmastra released by Ashwatthama. So in this context, Prabhupada brings about significance of pure devotees being surrendered, and how does the Lord reciprocate to their surrendered devotees. So here Prabhupada mentions about this specific weapon that was used, that's the Brahmastra. So what is this Brahmastra? In fact, we keep hearing that as the ultimate weapon, and here it is mentioned Brahmastra is a product of a more subtle science, being the product of a finer sound, a mantra recorded in a Vedas. It is a mantra. If somebody qualified utters that and targets, and it's such a powerful thing that it can never miss a target. And the significance of this is it will just go and hit the target and nobody else. So Prabhupada compares this powerful weapon with the modern day for us to understand the nuclear weapon. Prabhupada says something similar to nuclear weapon but with more radiation and heat. Okay, so the Brahmastra is a product. Another advantage of this weapon is that it is not blind like the nuclear weapon, because it can be directed only to the target and nothing else. So here Ashwatthama had targeted not just the descendant of the Pandavas but also the Pandavas. There are 5 targets, 6 in fact, 5 Pandavas and the Uttara's son, who was still in the embryo. So to finish off the Pandava dynasty, this was the plan. But we see here knowing all this, Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa at once mood of a devotee. So Prabhupada in mood of a devotee. So Prabhupada in this context, a very similar context we can see elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Maharaj Ambrish, he was known for his devotion to Lord, and a mystic Durvasa, he tried to attack Maharaj Ambrish, and Maharaj Ambrish, we know in fact how he was retaliated. And at that same instant also Sudarshana came into rescue of Maharaj Amresh, and it almost devastated the ego and of Durvasa, where he had to bow down and seek forgiveness in front of Maharaj Amresh. So we see, whenever there is a danger for pure devotees, Lord personally takes care of them. So in the situation that is mentioned here is also the same thing, that Krishna was very quick in counteracting the Sudarshana Brahmastra released by Ashwatthama. One more significant point that we can try and understand from this purport is, here the word Ananya Vishayatmanam is significant. The Pandavas were 100% devotee, dependent on the protection of the Lord, although they were all great warriors themselves. We all know Arjuna, Yudhishthira, Bhima, they are all known for their prowess, and they were quite competent, great warriors they are called. But the Lord, so in general case it's mentioned, but the Lord neglects even the great warriors and also vanquishes them in no time. Similar to great Pandavas who were great warriors, there were many other warriors, but Krishna was not so keen for protecting them. He was in fact trying to finish them off. There were many on the Kaurava side, Karna to name some. They were all finished by, they were also great warriors, but they couldn't withstand because they were not seeking the protection of Lord Krishna, as unlike the Pandavas who were very much seeking the protection. So even great warriors come and go. We see in the past 5 centuries, many people have come and gone, where they proclaim to be very great, but it is all a matter of time that it takes away their prowess or authority. Okay, that's how Prabhupada says here, mentions about Krishna's vow that he had taken before even starting the war. What was that? That he would not participate or take part in the war or the battle. So, but we saw there were 2 occasions where he had foregone his own vow. So one was for protecting Arjuna, right in the battlefield, and where against Bhishma, right? And here we see he had again taken the Sudarshana weapon, breaking his own vow. So Prabhupada says, Shri Radha Govinda ki jai. Prabhupada signifies, he should have, about the Lord, he should have not taken up the own weapon, but the emergency was more important than his vow. He is better known as Bhakta Vatsala, or the lover of his devotees. Lord is known as Bhakta Vatsala, the lover of his devotees, and thus he prefers to continue as Bhakta Vatsala than to remain a worldly moralist. A moralist, we know, he stays by his words, sticks on to his reasoning, logic, but when time comes, a moralist may not be good enough. So that's what that's the point that Prabhupada brings about the quality or reciprocation of the Lord to protect his pure devotees like Pandavas. So Krishna himself keeps aside his own vow. In fact, Prabhupada also mentions this verse where in Bhagavad Gita, Lord had clearly promised that his devotees are never to be vanquished. Right? Kaunteya pratijanihi namai bhakta pranashati. So Krishna tells to Kaunteya, Arjuna, you proclaim on behalf of me that my devotees will not perish. So had Krishna told, okay, that my devotees will not perish, he would sometimes not follow his own vow, unlike what we like what we see here. But when his devotee proclaims, or so he will abide by the word of his pure devotee. That's what is brought about an understanding how much Lord is up to their devotees' words or devotees' desires. So here we see, no, in fact, if you see that verse, yeah, Kshipram bhavati dharmatma swasyantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashati. Just before these words, okay, in Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned, apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadureva samantavya samyak vyavasitosi saha. So the translation is, even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. So the significance that Krishna wants to mention here is the devotional practice, if somebody gets into, is quite significant, that even if he may have to, because of old habits, if he falls down sometimes, he is still to be considered saintly. So he basically, Kshipram bhavati, that's where he is saying, very quickly, somebody who is on the path of devotional service, especially the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra and the following regulative principles, will very quickly bring a person to the stage of pure devotional service. It's just a matter of time. That's the significance of having these two verses back to back. So Kshipram bhavati dharmatma sasvasanti nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi. Immediately he is saying to Kaunteya, you proclaim that my devotees will not perish. So this is a very significant aspect. We in this world practicing Krishna conscious fall short with some of the instructions sometimes, but we should know and seek encouragement from these verses that it is just a matter of time that we should try and follow, and we will be in the right path. So there is one more significant conversation that Prabhupada brings about on this context. I would try to recall that conversation. It was by one of the devout disciples of Prabhupada asking Prabhupada. So what was this? It was during the occasion or the situation that Prabhupada is explaining about a verse in the fag end of Bhagavad Gita, where the whole Bhagavad Gita was told to Arjuna, and Arjuna was quite competent enough to now start fighting, give up his weakness of not fighting. So that's where Arjuna's statement comes like this. Arjuna vacha nastamoha smritirlabdva tvat prasadat mayachyuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. The translation: Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory and by your mercy, and I am now firm and free from doubt, and I am prepared to act according to your instructions. So this is at almost the end, where Arjuna is getting prepared, that now he is ready to hear Karishye Vachanam Tava. Whatever you tell Krishna, I am ready to, whatever Vachana, whatever instruction you give, I am ready to do. So this was the instruction Prabhupada was trying to explain, where Arjuna is saying, my illusion is dispelled. So immediately this disciple, Bhurijana, he says, Prabhupada, I think my illusion is not yet dispelled. So Prabhupada is explaining Arjuna after Bhagavad Gita hearing, his illusion is dispelled, and immediately he was very frank, and he says, my illusion is not yet dispelled. So Prabhupada laughs at it little and then continues to say, I want to understand. So that Bhurijana asks, I want to understand in the sense like exactly how far your instructions are, because I know I want to do it what you say, but I am not exactly. He wants to tell that I am not exactly able to follow, like Arjuna followed Krishna, but I am not able to follow fully about what you are telling. So Prabhupada cuts there and then says, if you still cannot understand what is my instruction, then how can I help you? New students may say like that, you are intelligent, educated, old student, our movement is the beginning of the spiritual life is to surrender. So Prabhupada encouraging him and also giving him some pat. So he says, you are an old student, you should be knowing what is surrender. So basically Prabhupada is saying you are not fully surrendering like Arjuna is surrendering. So that's what he goes on to say. A very nice example. Prabhupada goes on to say a very nice example for him to come out of his shortcomings, or how is he not able to follow, or why is he still in illusion. So it goes on like that. So here is the example. It is exactly like this. If you ignite wood for fire, if the wood is dry, the fire takes place immediately. And if it is moist, then it takes time. Only smoke will come, so smoke is not required. The blazing fire is required. Then if from the wood, if simply smoke comes, you cannot do any work. There is a trace of fire. As soon as there is a smoke, there is fire, but that is not useful. But if you require blazing fire, not smoke fire, so blazing fire takes place if the wood is dry, immediately takes place. So otherwise you will be enjoying smoke, be satisfied. When there is smoke, there is fire, but it is not useful. So basically Prabhupada is trying to explain that wood cannot be becoming dry again. So it will just generate just the smoke, but it will not give the flame required for anything else. So giving an analogy and a fact that Prabhupada very interestingly talks about this. Very interestingly, this is a fact. Some time back, as people are very inquisitive to see some yogic magic, so a rich man asked one of the yogi who came there, what you have learnt about yogic perfection? Then the yogi says, I can, in the severe winter season, I can dip myself in the water up to the neck and practice yoga. So how long can you remain? That person asks. So the yogi replies, entire night without in the cold water, severe cold, I can stay. All right. Then this person says, if you remain in the severe cold within water overnight, I shall give you such and such presentation. So he is saying, I will give you some presentation if you stay in the whole night. Then this yogi was so confident, so he agreed. And the morning, so he did it. The whole night he did it. And then the morning he comes and says, okay, where is my presentation? Then, so this person wants to avoid giving the presentation. So he says, he was having one assistant. So assistant was little crooked maybe. So he said, no, he did not do it. There was a lamp, Akasha Deepa, near the pond. So that was giving a heat. And so he was keeping warm by himself. Then this person, yogi, gets offended. I am in the water and there is a Akasha Deepa quite far away, and he is saying that that has given me the heat, just to give get rid of the presentation that he has to give. So I will teach him something. Then he goes to one more person, with that person who was supposed to give presentation. So he asked one more person, how do I tackle this situation? So they both come into some agreement, and the other servant, who was servant of that person who challenged and lost, he said, next day you don't go to the work at 9 o'clock. Okay, somebody calls you, then you say you're cooking. And then the next day he was supposed to go for the work, and then somebody comes and asks, quickly come, no, sir is calling. Then he says, no, I'm cooking. So how is the cooking going on? He had kept the smoke at the base level and a cooker at a loft. And then he says, when the smoke comes and then when that gets cooked, then I will eat and come. Then this was a little ironic, and then he goes and tells the sir, see, this is what he is telling. Then he comes there and says, so you said if a Akasha Deepa can warm up a pond, why can't a fire or a smoke here on the bottom cook the cooker which is on the loft? So that's how basically Prabhupada saying, you are becoming wet, or you are not applying what Krishna is saying or what I am saying to you. To the Bhuri Jana who is saying, my illusion isn't gone, he is saying with this example that you aren't applying it properly. You are keeping the fire somewhere and you are becoming wet. So that's how yogi was quite enough. Well, he was supposed to get the presentation, but he wasn't given. So just the tricks will not help you. You may be trying on your bit, but if you are not sincere enough to chant properly, follow regulative principles, then you may have to see this shortcomings within you. So that's how Prabhupada, whenever he instructs his disciples, always brings in some logic and facts that keeps the devotees always memorable, so that such things will always kind of encourage the devotees and come out of the shortcomings that each one of all of us have. So this was quite instructive, and this is also how protection from the Lord and the devotional service aspects can be continued. I'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.